Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our service. Let's get started by joining our voices together in song. Let's rise in the ways that we do for around 393, Jubilate Deo. Those are the only words you need to know, Jubilate Deo. And we're going to try it in 3 parts just to make things fun for the first thing this morning. So this section, which means the far side and this side, are part 1. So you can continue on from there. This section here is part 2, and Robert will help you know when to sing. In this section, you're part 3, and I'm going to be on part 3 too. So watch
you guys
me,
remember your parts, because I'm going to be doing
so,
them. Okay.
let's go ahead and we're going to sing it through once in unison, and then we will do it then as a 3-part round twice. So once in unison, 2-part round twice. There you go. We did it. We did something. So I want to welcome all of you, whether you are viewing us on live stream or here in the sanctuary. I'm the Reverend Doug Wadkins, the interim minister here, and I am happy to say hello to you all. We are especially glad for our visitors, both online and here in person. Either way, we hope that you'll take a moment to get to know us better. If you're here, you can go out to the welcome corner, and there's someone there to greet you and give you more information about the congregation, as well as getting you signed up to be able to receive our weekly newsletter, The Contact. However, if you're online, you can do that very same thing. If you go to our homepage and click on the banner that is entitled Welcome Visitors, it will take you to a page that gives you information about who we are. And also on that page, there is a virtual guest book. If you sign that, you will be able to get our weekly contact. It comes as an email, and we would be really happy for you to get to know us better and join us in person when and if you were able. We remind you that at the end of the service, there is a coffee hour, and there are a couple of things that you need to know today. It's a busy one. First of all, the UUCS Arts Council is pleased to host Everything Under the Sun, an exhibit by members of Women Contemporary Artists, WCA, which is a regional organization of over 100 members actively engaged in the visual fine arts. So please join us in the Lexile wing. So that's the wing all the way across the courtyard. It began today at 10 and it will go on until 1 o'clock for the opening reception. This is not an official WC event, but the variety of works on view reflect the diversity and talents of its members, including paintings and watercolors, oil and acrylic, as well as drawings, collage, and sculptures made from clay, wood, and paper. And that exhibit will continue to be on view through July 14th. Also at the same time during coffee hour in the Reeb Room, which if you go out the door is to your left, it is marked the Reeb Room, we will have a reception that bids me a fond farewell. So I would love to see you there and have a chance to have whatever we're having, I imagine, cake, and a chance for us to honor our time together. So plenty to do after the service. We look forward to that. Now next week, or coming up, we have our General Assembly, which is our national gathering that happens once a year. And this Wednesday it begins in Portland, Oregon. And much of it is streamed on YouTube. So you can check out our website for the schedule and links. You can still register and participate virtually. Because of the time difference, their Sunday morning worship will not happen until 12:30 our time, and we'll still be showing it here in the sanctuary. We will have our own service at the usual time, 10:45, but you can also come and see it together at 12:30 our time here in the sanctuary. You can also watch it at home. So all of those things, we welcome you here, and we'll begin now with our prelude.
Lift thine eyes, oh, lift thine eyes to the mountains, whence cometh, whence cometh, whence cometh help. Thy help cometh, thy help cometh, thy help cometh from the Maker of heaven and earth. He hath said, thy foot shall not be moved. Thy keeper will never slumber. Lift thine eyes, oh, lift thine eyes to the mountains, whence cometh, whence cometh, whence cometh help, whence cometh, whence cometh, whence cometh help.
Yay! Well, I'm so glad that was not a train wreck. We did very well. Thank you, everyone. So we now have our chalice lighting, and today it happens to be Juneteenth. And so I wanted to light our chalice with a reminder of joining in that powerful holiday. The enslaved people in the Confederacy didn't all, who were not either over in Union lines or who were not in occupied territory, did not necessarily find themselves freed by Lincoln's proclamation. It really was at the end of the Civil War. So on June 19th of 1865, a proclamation by General Gordon Granger in Galveston finally solidified the emancipation of 250,000 enslaved people in that state. And so Juneteenth was born. And it moved from being a Texas phenomenon to a national one, in part by the decision by King's associate, Ralph Abernathy, and his widow, Coretta Scott King, who cut short the People's March to commemorate on June 19th the Juneteenth celebration. One of the reasons why it's so important is that it is a clear articulation of the fact that America can never be free until her people are free. And it is a celebration of the people who have worked to make it so. It is both an embodiment of the evils that still plague America and a celebration of the good people who fought those evils. Finally, the Atlantic writes, the enslaved people who experienced the rapture of emancipation on this day many, many years ago likely could not have predicted the exact path the country would take since. But they knew in the marrow of their bones and the scars on their backs that their victory had come at the greatest possible cost. They knew the impossible ardor that would be required to pick up the pieces of their broken families and leave their descendants to a better life. And they continued to celebrate Juneteenth, even as it became clear that America would not so easily yield them its embrace. Their hearts rejoiced in victory with a joy that could not be stolen. So in honor of Juneteenth and in honor of our second principle, we light this chalice as we covenant to affirm and promote justice, equity, and compassion in human relations.
Sadly, today is the last time I'll be doing Time for All Ages with our interim minister, Doug Wadkins. You know, it really has been a journey these past 2 years, with a good portion of it only on Zoom. But I am very grateful to Doug and his support of my ministry, including sharing a Time for All Ages each week with you so that we can have a more integrated congregation. Also with keeping our religious education program alive, although I am going to admit that Zoom is a terrible way to engage children and families. And I also appreciate his support of my own racial justice journey. So we were never able to do an official welcome to Doug with our children, and so it seems in a way strange to say goodbye.
But if we had, I would have brought before the congregation a backpack, and in it I would have had some things that I bring with me everywhere, some of the things that I carry with me that remind me of the past, like a photo album, and some of the things that remind me what I'm here to do. Things like I would bring a mirror and to reflect to back to the congregation who they are and help them think about that. I would bring with me a compass and a map to help us navigate this time and decide where we want to go next. And normally, I never got to do that, but I would then normally repack them in my backpack today, but also talk about some of what I hope stays with you and what I would take with me from our time together.
Great. So don't go away.
Okay.
No, I need you to take your backpack and slip it on. And come and stand right here. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, and you're missing something. There you go. That's something to take from your time here in Florida. And so I'm hoping that you'll indulge me again with this story this week. I find it very funny and very fitting. And as a disclaimer, none of the characters depicted in this story are based on real people, unless you identified with them. Okay, so here's our story. See You Later, Alligator, by Sally Hopgood and illustrated by Emma Levy. So, Tortoise was ready to go on a big adventure to see St. Louis, but he possibly couldn't leave without saying goodbye to all of his animal friends. See you later, alligator. I'll be a while, crocodile. Toodaloo, kangaroo. I'll call you soon, Ms. Raccoon. I'll be gone soon, Mr. Baboon, because it's a long way there, baby bear. You'll have to stay here, little dear. Through marshy bogs, Scruffy Dog, and over that hill, Buffalo Bill, and across great plains so dry, Butterfly. Take care of the house, timid mouse. The keys under the mat, Mr. Cat. I can't stop for another day, Mrs. J. There's so much to see and do, Mr. Gnu. It's time for me to go, Slow-Mo Joe. And every day it was the same. By the time Tortoise had said all of his goodbyes, the park gates were locked, and his big adventure to go see St. Louis would have to start all over again the next morning. Is he still here? Yep. The end. So Doug, you know, we've been locking the park gates every day to keep you among us, but we know of your great adventure that awaits you in St. Louis, so we have sadly left the gates open this time. Thank you for sharing yourself with us these past 2 years, and we hope to hear more about your adventures as you move along in your life's journey. So let us now rise as you're able to sing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. And after the song, any younger UUs can join me in the back as we go out to our class.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power, our separate fires will kindle one flame. Witness the mystery of this hour, unto the light appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit of and on. Seeds for the sowing are laid in store. Nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter and spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather to celebrate now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again.
We move now into our time of centering, and we will begin with centering in word, and then I'll invite you to a few moments of quiet with me, and then we will join together, remaining seated in singing Spirit of Life. In honor of Father's Day, we offer a reading from a name that will soon become very, very, very much a part of your life. The reading is entitled "Forgive Me" by the Reverend J. Wolin. Forgive me, dear Father, for all the trouble I caused, the missed curfews, the missed classes, your unfulfilled dreams for me. Forgive me, dear Father, but your dreams are not my dreams. Forgive me, dear Father, and I will forgive you for missed moments that you sacrificed so that one day I could follow my dreams. Now, forgive me, my son, for whatever errors I have made. Forgive me, my son, for what I did not know. Know that I sacrificed so that one day you could follow your dreams. May all our failings from generation to generation lead one day to wisdom. But until then, we will always have love. Maybe that is wisdom enough. Here ends the centering in word. May we spend a few moments together in quiet. Our reading this morning is taken from the Unitarian Universalist minister, John Lou Johnston. Religious congregations help to change us by helping us know who we are, not at a surface level. You're an American, a retiree, a teacher, an attorney, or even at the deeper level where we sometimes find ourselves. You were a dad, a lesbian, an artist, a friend, but at the deepest, most profound levels, at the place where we connect to our roots, in our souls. There, you are a reflection of the divine. You are Buddha. You are Christ. You are the one with the Spirit that infuses all that is good and holy in the world. We want our religious congregations to call us to that which is holy, to push us and prod us to our own best selves. Here ends the reading. As we move into our offering, may it now be given and received from a place of abundance and love for the work that we do together in the world. So may it be. So in 2012, after 13 years serving the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship in Bellingham, Washington, I decided it was time for me to move on. And my then partner had just been accepted in graduate school in Bloomington, Indiana. So one day in summer, we packed all of our things into a U-Haul truck that was actually too small for all of our things. So we left quite a few of the things at Goodwill and packed a car on the back of it, and I drove across the United States behind all of that. The thing is that I have a panic disorder that fortunately I'm able to keep under control all these years by exercise and meditation, and when desperately needed, medication. But one of the triggers of a panic attack for me is to drive in a car for long distances by myself. And it had been years really since it had bothered me, but I got in the car the first day and I did just fine. And we got as far as Spokane. But there were many, many more days. And so the second day, about the third time that I watched my partner nearly get run off the road by a semi as we were going through the middle of America and they were zooming at about 1,000 miles per hour, I began to have doubts about everything. Not to mention that right before I left, I had a Honda hybrid and the check engine light had come on several times and the mechanic had said, oh, well, your hybrid battery is beginning to fail. So eventually that's about $3,000. And just to make it more interesting, he also said, and by the way, when you get to your new place, you probably should replace all your tires because they really need to be replaced. So somewhere in the middle of the United States, I began to think, I'm not sure that I can do this. But I would get up every morning and I would get into my car and we would start our trip. And on the third morning, when I felt especially anxious about this journey, as I was driving through long fields with the giant windmills blowing in the wind, I found myself suddenly beginning to sing this. May I be at peace and ease and know the joy of my true nature. Know the joy of my true nature. May I be at one and well within a sea of loving kindness. In a sea of loving kindness. I started singing a loving kindness chant that I'd been taught by Mary Gregolia, my supervisor. And I found myself beginning as I drove the thousands of miles. Every time I got anxious, I began that prayer, which begins with yourself, but then moves towards blessing the world around you. May you be free from suffering. May you be safe from harm. Open to deep compassion. May we live the joys of loving kindness. Our true nature, loving kindness, our true nature. And as I sang that over and over again, the trip began to change for me. I began to think about how I was carrying with me so many people who were thinking about me as I was driving, and sending me texts at the end of every day about how I was doing. I was thinking about how holding people in that chant really connected me with them. And I also found that by singing that song and bringing myself fully present, when I went over the Rockies, even though I worried the entire time that my hybrid car would not make it, I could also be present to its beauty. And when I went across the Badlands and I could see that sort of harsh, wonderful gorgeousness, it could move me deeply. And so by the time that I got to Bloomington, Indiana, it felt like the trip had become a sort of blessing. Not an easy one, but one that was carrying me into a new phase of my life. And it certainly did. And I realize, as I'm getting ready to say goodbye, that for me, that is sort of the essence of what interim ministry is about, is recognizing the truth that at every given moment, we are in the midst of all three things. We are in the midst of new beginnings. We are in the midst of endings. And mostly, we are always in the middle of something. And the way in which we understand that is not just the core of interim ministry, it is actually the core of what it means to be fully alive, what it means to be a congregation that is dynamic and able to engage the world in front of you, no matter what the world may bring. And so I want just for a moment to think with you about why that's important and what it might ask of us as we think about the beginnings, the middles, and the endings in our life. So the thing is that we are always, whether we're aware of it or not, in the process of beginning something. By waking up in the morning, it is its own sort of beginning. And what we hope is that that beginning will connect us with a sense of possibility in our life. As Teresa Soto wrote, there is a moment when the dream we share is newly born, wet and wriggling in our hands. Sometimes its true saving future looks vulnerable and small before us, and we remain unsure. Just hold on. I found myself thinking, much like as I found every morning when I woke up, there was this moment of great doubt that I had made the hugest mistake in my life by deciding to drive across the U.S. in an old car. But also, what an amazing adventure I was undertaking. And I had no idea what it would bring my way, but somehow by placing it in the context of something larger than myself, it began to open up possibilities, not even so much about the ministry in the future, but what that day would hold, what sort of beautiful or interesting or strange things I would see, and how many people on the trip, when they found out that I was driving across the U.S. to begin a new job, were so kind and so very excited for my new adventure. It really gave me a sense of the goodness of people all over this country, something I could hold on to all the more now. The other thing, though, is that sense of possibility goes much larger than just ourselves. It extends itself to the world around us. As Howard Zinn wrote, and Howard Zinn is hardly a person who's steeped only in the sweet and wonderful things about life. He has written one of the most incredibly intense histories of our United States that I've ever read. But he says this: to be hopeful in bad times is not just foolishly romantic. It is based on the fact that human history is a history not only of cruelty, but also of compassion, sacrifice, courage, kindness. What we choose to emphasize in this complex history will determine our lives. If we see only the worst, it destroys our capacity to do something. If we remember those times and places, and there are so many where people have behaved magnificently, this gives us the energy to act, and at least the possibility of sending this spinning top of a world in a different direction. And if we do act, in however small a way, we don't have to wait for some grand utopian future. The future is an infinite succession of presents, and to live now as we think human beings should live, in defiance of all that is bad around us, is itself a marvelous victory. So by understanding throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your life, you are participating in giving yourself to possibility and to new beginnings. The more that you bring that to awareness, the more likely that you will be able to engage whatever the world brings you and shape it in a different and more possibility-filled way. Not that you would lose sight of the difficulty at all, but understand that underneath it, there is something very old in human beings that also turns towards our better selves, sometimes when we least expect it. The other thing that we are always in the midst of are endings. Now, it's true, I believe there are very few actual endings. What really tends to happen is that we complete some cycle. We leave a job, our children go off to school, we make our way through a day and go to bed and start the cycle again. But the way that we understand these cumulative endings often are the ways that we shape the stories that tell the tale of our lives. And the way that we understand that story is very powerful in how we continue to live our lives. So it is important for us to think about, as we complete each of these cycles, to remember the stories and let them speak to us. As David Loy wrote, we do not experience a world and afterward make up stories to understand it. Stories teach us what is real, what is true, what is possible. They are not abstractions from life, though they can be that. They are necessary for our engagement with life. He concludes, as the Scottish philosopher Alistair MacIntyre puts it, I can only answer the question what I am to do if I can answer the question of what story or stories do I find myself a part. So one of the things that we try to do as interim ministers is to have you think about this congregation's past and your own past as a story, so that you engage it with your imagination and your heart as well as your brain. It isn't just about the facts, but it is about the meaning that flows underneath the stories that you choose to remember and tell, about your own life, about the life of this congregation. And from remembering and reinvigorating those stories, often we can find truths that tell us enough about who we are to really engage the current moment with more power, with more depth, grounded and centered in something deeper. But most of all, what we really do in our lives is that we live in the middle. Most of the real moments that actually matter are neither thought of as beginnings or endings, but the day-to-day moments that cumulatively make up our life. And as was true as I was sitting in that car and driving across the U.S., if I only thought about the future, that was overwhelming. And if I thought only about the past that I was leaving behind, that was really depressing and sad. But by singing that song that made me very much present in the moment, I could actually live my life. I could see the things in front of me. I could understand my connections that I was carrying with me in that moment that made all of the difference. The more that we are able to tell the story of our lives, to connect with the story in ways that are meaningful, the more likely that we will understand who we are and what we are to do. Anne thought to herself, as she was sitting in the Mayo Clinic, that they had traveled a very long way to hear bad news. The doctor had talked for a while about things that she already knew, third-stage cancer, and that it had metastasized through her body. But at the end, when they hoped that there might be some miracle way for her treatment to bring about her feeling better, the doctor said simply, "We really don't have much to offer you that you haven't already tried in chemotherapy. There are a couple of potential experimental drugs that you're welcome to join a trial, but we have no idea if it will do anything but buy you a little bit of time." And so she thought to herself about how hard it had been to go through chemo, and the thought of doing that again, and all of the days that she had barely been able to get out of bed didn't really feel like much of a life. But also, as she thought about the fact that her daughter was just about to give birth to their second grandchild, there was a part of her that thought maybe even a single day is worth it. But at the hotel, she turned to her husband and said, "Let's just go home." They decided not to stay and talk with a second doctor. When they got to the airport and they changed their ticket, they had a bit of luck that they were bumped up into first class. And so as they flew home and they had dinned the cabin and she had had a chance to sit there for a while and look out the window, Anne began to think about her life. And she looked out the window and she saw across the cloud cover this star that was so brilliant and powerful in the sky. And suddenly she remembered many years ago this amazing day with her sister Linda. and how it really, in many ways, had just been a typical day. They had played together in the morning. They had done chores in the afternoon. They had had a dinner that they helped make in the evening. But that night, they had gone onto the hill that was in the far pasture, and the two of them just laid on their backs on a clear, starry night, and they looked up at the sky. And Anne's sister Linda, although just beginning school, was always really good about recognizing constellations. And so Anne was asking her, well, what star is that? And Linda said to her, well, you're being silly. That isn't a star at all. That's a planet. You can tell because it's glowing so purely. And it isn't pulsating. So as she sat on that plain, she found herself feeling, as she looked at what was probably a planet, that her sister was there with her. I mean, really there with her. And she remembered how at the end of that night, as they were looking at the sky, her sister had said, have you ever had a day that was so amazingly wonderful and full that it was like you had lived a lifetime? And of course, she had no idea what to say to that. But her sister took her hand. They were laying with their feet in opposite directions and their heads next to each other. She took her hand and she pulled her head against hers so that her voice resonated in her head, and she said, well, this is that kind of day. She felt the presence of her sister so powerfully in that moment, even though many years ago her sister had died driving home from work one night in a car accident. But her presence was so powerfully there right then. And she looked over at her husband, who was asleep and snoring gently. And she realized how very strong and steadfast and kind and brave he had been for all of those months of therapy, and how in that moment he looked so peaceful as he slept. And so she leaned over towards him, and she said so quietly as not to wake him, have you ever lived a moment so full that it's like an entire lifetime in 1 second? And very carefully, so as not to wake him, because he looked so restful for once, she traced very gently on each of his eyebrows with her finger. And she said, well, this is one of those moments. And in that moment, she knew what she would do. In our lives, may the stories of who we are, may the memories that make up the deepest part of us, may new beginnings, may being present, may all of these things tell you who you are and what you are to do. May you join me in our closing hymn, which is number 108, My Life Flows On, and in this song.
My life flows on in endless song, above earth's northern vision. I hear the little far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars, I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me glows, in the night it giveth. Though unafraid my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging, since love prevails in heaven tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, and friends rejoice both far and near. How can I keep from singing? The prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are clinging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
And now our closing words. On a clear day, rise and look around you, and you'll see who you are. On a clear day, how it will astound you that the glow of your being outshines every star. You feel part of every mountain, sea, and shore. You can hear from far and near a word you've never heard before. And on that clear day, on that clear day, you can see forever and ever and ever and We extinguish this chalice, but not the light that we carry into the world. It remains until we gather in this place again. Thank you for these 2 years. I look forward to seeing you in the reception in a few minutes, and may you have a wonderful new life with Reverend Jay. See you soon.